GLS Solicitors is led by award-winning solicitor Harjap Singh Bhangal. GLS Solicitors, when the experts need an expert.
ਹਾਂਜੀ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਸਤਿ ਸ੍ਰੀ ਅਕਾਲ, ਵੈਲਕਮ ਟੂ ਦ ਸ਼ੋ। ਜਿੱਦਾਂ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਪਤਾ ਆ ਕਿ ਅੱਜ ਫਰਾਈਡੇ ਆ ਤਾਂ ਅੱਜ ਆਪਾਂ ਇਮੀਗ੍ਰੇਸ਼ਨ ਦੀ ਗੱਲਾਂ ਕਰੀਦੀਆਂ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ। ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਲੇਟੈਸਟ ਇਨਫੋਰਮੇਸ਼ਨ ਦੱਸੀ ਦੀ ਕਿ ਕੀ ਹੋ ਰਿਹਾ ਦੁਨੀਆ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ, ਕੀ ਨਹੀਂ in the world of immigration. So ਫਰਵਰੀ ਵਿੱਚ ਕੀ ਹੋ ਰਿਹਾ, ਉਹ ਫਰਵਰੀ ਵਿੱਚ ਮੈਂ ਤਾਂ ਕਾਫੀ ਬਿਜ਼ੀ ਰਿਹਾ with media appearances and ਕਾਫੀ ਕੰਮ 'ਚ ਆਪਾਂ ਬਿਜ਼ੀ ਰਹੇ ਆ। ਜਿੱਦਾਂ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਪਤਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਮਾਰਚ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ 11 ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਕੇਅਰ ਹੋਮ ਦੇ ਜੋ ਵਰਕਰਸ ਹੈਗੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਡਿਪੈਂਡੈਂਟ ਆ ਨਹੀਂ ਸਕਦੇ, ਸੋ ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਆਪਾਂ ਕਾਫੀ ਬਿਜ਼ੀ ਰਹੇ। ਨੈਕਸਟ ਮੰਥ ਤੋਂ ਕਾਫੀ ਰੂਲ ਚੇਂਜਸ ਹੋ ਰਹੇ ਆ ਜੋ ਆਪਾਂ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਦੱਸਾਂਗੇ ਕਿ ਕੀ ਹੋ ਰਿਹਾ ਕੀ ਨਹੀਂ। ਪਿਛਲੇ ਹਫ਼ਤੇ ਵੀ ਮੈਂ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਉਹ ਸ਼ੋਅ 'ਚ ਦੱਸਿਆ ਸੀਗਾ। ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਨੇ ਦੇਖਣਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਆ ਉਹ YouTube ਤੇ ਸਬਸਕ੍ਰਾਈਬ ਹੋ ਸਕਦੇ ਆ ਐਂਡ ਦੇ ਕੈਨ ਚੈੱਕ ਆਲ ਦ ਪ੍ਰੀਵੀਅਸ ਵੀਡੀਓਜ਼। ਆਪਾਂ ਹਰ ਹਫ਼ਤੇ ਦੀ ਸ਼ੋਅ YouTube ਤੇ ਨਾਲ ਦੀ ਨਾਲ ਲਾਈਵ ਚਲਾਈ ਦੀ ਹੈ 7 ਵਜੇ ਫਰਾਈਡੇ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ। ਸੋ ਉਹ YouTube ਦੀ ਸ਼ੋਆਂ ਤੇ ਪਾਉਣ ਦਾ ਤਾਂ ਫਾਇਦਾ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਲਈ ਰੈਫਰੈਂਸ ਰਹਿ ਜਾਂਦੀ ਆ ਫॉर द ਫਿਊਚਰ ਐਂਡ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕਦੇ ਵੀ ਐਕਸੈਸ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ, ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਕਈ ਲੋਕ ਫਰਾਈਡੇ ਨੂੰ ਨਹੀਂ ਦੇਖ ਸਕਦੇ ਤਾਂ ਵੀਕ 'ਚ ਦੇਖ ਲੈਂਦੇ ਆ, ਕਈ ਲੋਕ ਤਾਂ ਕੰਮ ਤੇ ਦੇਖ ਲੈਂਦੇ ਆ, ਕਈ ਲੋਕ ਟੈਕਸੀਆਂ 'ਚ ਬਹਿ ਕੇ ਦੇਖਦੇ ਆ। ਪੁੱਛੋ ਨਾ ਹੀ ਕਿੱਥੇ ਕਿੱਥੇ ਸ਼ੋਅ ਮੇਰੇ ਦੇਖ ਹੁੰਦੇ, ਲੋਰੀਆਂ ਚੱਲਦੇ ਦੇ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ, ਆਸਟ੍ਰੇਲੀਆ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ, ਇੱਥੇ ਫੈਕਟਰੀਆਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ, ਘਰਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਤਾਂ ਦੇਖਦੇ ਹੀ ਆ। ਸੋ ਦ ਬੈਸਟ ਵੇ ਕਿ ਜੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਮਿਸ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਰਨਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ, ਓਬਵੀਅਸਲੀ ਫਰਾਈਡੇ ਤਾਂ ਆਪਾਂ 7 ਵਜੇ ਤਾਂ ਸਾਂਝ ਤਾਂ ਹੈਗਾ ਹੀ ਆ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਆਡੀਅנס ਨਾਲ, ਅੱਜ ਦਾ ਥੋੜੀ 2007 ਦਾ, ਬਟ ਤੁਸੀਂ YouTube ਤੇ ਵੀ ਦੇਖ ਸਕਦੇ ਆ। ਐਂਡ ਮੇਕ ਸ਼ੂਰ ਯੂ ਡੋਨਟ ਮਿਸ ਐਨ ਐਪੀਸੋਡ। ਸਬਸਕ੍ਰਾਈਬ ਕਰੋ ਤਾਂ ਉਹਦੇ ਤੇ ਆਟੋਮੈਟਿਕਲੀ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਇਨਬਾਕਸ ਤੇ ਆ ਜਾਏਗੀ ਜੀ ਜੋ ਨਵੀਂ ਵੀਡੀਓ ਪੈਂਦੀ ਆ। ਉਹ ਸਰ ਟਿਕਟੋਕ ਤੇ ਇੰਸਟਾਗ੍ਰਾਮ ਤੇ ਮੈਂ ਲਿੰਕ ਪਾ ਦਿੰਦਾ ਹੁੰਦਾ, ਸੋ ਉੱਥੇ ਵੀ ਜੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਫੋਲੋ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਦੈਨ ਪਲੀਜ਼ ਫੋਲੋ ਟਵਿੱਟਰ ਤੇ। ਓਕੇ, ਸੋ ਇਸ ਸ਼ੋਅ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕੀ ਦੱਸਿਆ ਗਿਆ। ਇਸ ਸ਼ੋਅ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਮੈਂ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਡਿਸਕਸ਼ਨਸ ਦੱਸੂਗਾ ਜੋ ਮੇਰੀ ਮੀਡੀਆ ਤੇ ਹੋਈ ਆ ਦਿਸ ਵੀਕ। ਵਨੈਸਾ ਨਾਲ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਪਤਾ ਟੋਕ ਟੀਵੀ ਤੇ ਮੇਰੀ ਗੱਲ ਹੋਈ ਆ ਕਿ ਡੋਂਕੀਆਂ ਬਾਰੇ। ਫਿਲਮ ਡੋਂਕੀ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਦੇਖ ਲਈ ਹੋਣੀ ਆ। ਡੋਂਕੀ ਕਿ ਇੰਗਲੈਂਡ ਨੂੰ ਕਿੱਦਾਂ ਲੱਗਦੀ ਆ, ਪਰ ਆਲਸੋ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਹੈਰਾਨ ਹੋਗੇ ਦੇਖ ਕੇ ਕਿ ਡੋਂਕੀਆਂ ਬਾਹਰ ਨੂੰ ਵੀ ਲਾ ਰਹੇ ਲੋਕ। ਸੋ ਗੋਰਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਪਤਾ ਲੱਗ ਗਿਆ ਕਿ ਜੀ ਇੰਗਲੈਂਡ ਤੋਂ ਵੀ ਹੁਣ ਯੂਰਪ ਤੱਕ ਡੋਂਕੀਆਂ ਲੱਗਣ ਡਈਆਂ, ਤੇ ਉਹਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕੀਤੀ ਆ। ਆਲਸੋ ਮੇਰੀ ਇੱਕ ਡਿਬੇਟ ਹੋਈ ਇੱਕ ਹੋਰ ਵਕੀਲ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਇਸ ਅਹੁਦੇ ਤੇ, ਇਸ ਮੁੱਦੇ ਤੇ ਕਿ ਜੀ ਕਿ ਅਸਾਈਲਮ ਸੀਕਰ ਜੋ ਹੈਗੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਕੰਮ ਦੀ ਇਜਾਜ਼ਤ ਮਿਲਣੀ ਚਾਹੀਦੀ ਹੈ ਜਾਂ ਨਹੀਂ। ਸੋ ਉਹ GBNEWS ਤੇ ਸੀ, ਉਹ ਕਾਫੀ ਦਿਲਚਸਪ ਬਹਿਸ ਹੈ, ਤੁਸੀਂ ਦੇਖ ਸਕਦੇ ਆ। ਆਲਸੋ ਜੀ ਜੋ ਚੀਫ ਇੰਸਪੈਕਟਰ ਸੀ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਹੋਮ ਆਫਿਸ ਨੇ ਅਪੁਆਇੰਟ ਕੀਤਾ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਜੀ ਸਾਡੀ ਇਮੀਗ੍ਰੇਸ਼ਨ ਸਿਸਟਮ ਤੇ ਰਿਪੋਰਟਾਂ ਬਣਾ ਕਿ ਇਹਦੇ 'ਚ ਨੁਕਸ ਕਿੰਨੇ ਆ। ਹੁਣ ਜੀ ਨੁਕਸ ਕੱਢਦੇ ਤੇ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ 13-15 ਰਿਪੋਰਟਾਂ ਬਣਾਈਆਂ, ਉਹਨੂੰ ਸੈਕ ਹੀ ਕਰਤਾ ਕਿ ਤੂੰ ਤਾਂ ਬਦਖੋਈਆਂ ਹੀ ਕਰੀ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਸਾਡੀਆਂ, ਤੂੰ ਤਾਂ ਸਾਡੇ ਨੁਕਸ ਹੀ ਕੱਢੀ ਜਾਂਦਾ। ਉਹ ਕਹਿੰਦਾ ਮੇਰੀ ਜੌਬ ਹੀ ਸੀ, ਤੁਸੀਂ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਕਿਹਾ ਕਿ ਨੁਕਸ ਕੱਢ, ਕਹਿੰਦਾ ਮੈਂ ਕੱਢ ਦਿੱਤੇ। ਤਾਂ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਇੰਨੇ ਨੁਕਸ ਥੋੜੀ ਕੱਢੀ ਦਾ, ਇੱਕ ਅੱਧਾ ਕੱਢੀ ਦਾ ਹੈ। ਜੇ ਨਵੀਂ ਵਹੁਟੀ ਘਰ ਨੂੰ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਆਓ ਤਾਂ ਇੱਕ ਅੱਧਾ ਨੁਕਸ ਹੀ ਕੱਢੀ ਦਾ, ਇਹ ਥੋੜੀ ਕਿ ਸਾਰਾ ਕਹਿਤਾ ਨਹੀਂ, ਮੈਂ ਤਾਂ ਹੋਲੀ ਰਿਜੈਕਟ ਕਰ ਦਿੱਤੀ। ਉਹਦੀਆਂ ਜੀ ਰਿਪੋਰਟਾਂ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਚੋਰੀ ਚਵੀਤੇ ਜੋ ਹੈਗੀਆਂ ਕੱਢ ਦਿੱਤੀਆਂ ਪਾਸੇ ਨੂੰ, ਤੇ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਵਿਚਾਰੇ ਨੂੰ ਸੈਕ ਦੇ ਦਿੱਤੀ। ਤਾਂ ਉਹ ਹੁਣ ਵਿਚਾਰਾ ਬੇਰੁਜ਼ਗਾਰ ਜਿਹਾ ਹੋ ਗਿਆ। ਉਹ ਕਹਿੰਦਾ ਦੱਸੋ ਮੇਰਾ ਕੀ ਕਸੂਰ ਹੈ। ਪਿੱਟਦਾ ਸੀ ਇੱਕ ਦਿਨ ਟੀਵੀ ਤੇ, ਕਹਿੰਦਾ ਮੈਂ ਦੇਖੋ ਕੀ ਕੀਤਾ, ਮੈਂ ਤਾਂ ਆਪਣੀ ਜੌਬ ਕੀਤੀ। ਕਹਿੰਦਾ ਮਤਲਬ ਇਹ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਸੀ ਮੈਂ ਝੂਠ ਬੋਲਾਂ, ਇਹਦਾ ਮਤਲਬ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਵਿਚਾਰਾ ਹੁਣ ਕੀ ਕਰੇ, ਔਖ ਨਹੀਂ ਸਹੀ। ਆਲਸੋ ਮੇਰੀ ਫੋਰਮਰ UKIP ਲੀਡਰ ਹੈਨਰੀ ਬੋਲਟਨ ਨਾਲ ਵੀ ਗੱਲ ਹੋਈ ਆ ਔਨ TV ਔਨ ਮਾਈਗ੍ਰੈਂਟਸ ਸ਼ੋ। ਸੋ ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵੀ ਇੱਕ ਨਵਾਂ ਵੀਜ਼ਾ ਜੋ ਵੀਜ਼ਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਯੰਗ ਪ੍ਰੋਫੈਸ਼ਨਲ ਸਕੀਮ ਵਾਲਾ, ਉਹਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਵੀ ਮੇਰੀ ਇੰਟਰਵਿਊ PTC ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਤੇ ਹੋਈ ਸੀ ਅਨਮੋਲ ਕੌਰ ਨਾਲ। ਉਹ ਵੀ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਆਪਾਂ ਦਿਖਾਵਾਂਗੇ ਜੋ ਹੈਗੀ ਯੰਗ ਪ੍ਰੋਫੈਸ਼ਨਲ ਸਕੀਮ ਜੋ ਵੀਜ਼ਾ ਹੈਗਾ, ਜਿਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ 3000 ਤੱਕ ਬੱਚੇ ਇੱਥੇ ਆ ਸਕਦੇ ਆ ਤੇ 2 ਸਾਲ ਲਈ ਕੰਮ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਆ। ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਪਰਮਿਟ ਫ੍ਰੀ ਜੋ ਹੈਗਾ, ਜਿੱਦਾਂ ਵਰਕਿੰਗ ਹੌਲੀਡੇ ਸਕੀਮ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਸੀ। ਸੋ ਉਹਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਪੂਰੀ ਜਾਣਕਾਰੀ ਹੈ ਇਸ ਸ਼ੋਅ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ। ਐਂਡ ਆਲਸੋ ਆਪਾਂ ਸ਼ਮੀਮਾ ਬੇਗਮ ਦੀ ਵੀ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਦੇ ਆ, ਜਿਹੜਾ ਕੇਸ ਹਾਰ ਗਈ ਆ ਕਿ ਉਹਦੀ ਨੈਸ਼ਨੈਲਿਟੀ ਉਹ ਤੋਂ ਖੋਹ ਲਈ ਗਈ ਆ ਬ੍ਰਿਟਿਸ਼, ਇਸ ਦੇ ਬਾਵਜੂਦ ਕਿ ਉਹ ਇੱਥੇ ਜੰਮੀ ਸੀ, ਇੱਥੇ ਪੈਦਾ ਹੋਈ ਸੀ, ਬ੍ਰਿਟਿਸ਼ ਸਿਟੀਜ਼ਨ ਸੀਗੀ, ਇੱਥੇ ਪੜ੍ਹੀ, ਪਰ ਫਿਰ ਵੀ ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਉਹ ISIS ਜੁਆਇਨ ਕਰ ਗਈ ਮੈਂ ਮੁਲਕ ਛੱਡ ਕੇ, ਤੇ ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵਾਪਸ ਨਹੀਂ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਆਉਣ ਦਿੰਦੇ, ਤੇ ਉਹਦੀ ਨੈਸ਼ਨੈਲਿਟੀ ਐਕਚੁਅਲੀ ਕੈਂਸਲ ਹੋ ਗਈ। ਤਾਂ ਕੋਰਟ ਨੇ ਰੂਲ ਕਰਤਾ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਜੀ ਸਹੀ ਕੀਤਾ ਜੋ ਬ੍ਰਿਟਿਸ਼ ਗਵਰਨਮੈਂਟ ਨੇ ਕੀਤਾ। ਸੋ ਇਸ ਸ਼ੋਅ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਾਫੀ ਕੁਛ ਹੋਊਗਾ ਜੀ ਇਹ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਦਾ।
Immigration lawyer Harjap Singh Bhangal. Harjap, so glad to have you on the programme. This is an extraordinary article today in the news about people who've got into this country, obviously at great personal risk to themselves, who want to get out again. They don't like it. It's not what they thought it was going to be. And they say they're doing their very best to stow away under trucks and lorries at great risk. But when the police find them, they bring them back to this country. This is not the story we're used to reading, is it, in any way?
I know, it's reverse migration.
Exactly.
It's actually like the asylum system gone into reverse, but it's not something new. I mean, a lot of people, a lot of the gangs, we know they operate on the shores of France, but they also operate on the shores of the UK. And for them, it's double the business because they have boats coming in or lorries coming in full of migrants, and they'd prefer them going out with migrants as well. Either way, the gangs get paid. And hence, this is why Keir Starmer makes sense when he says we have to stop the gangs, because ultimately it is the gangs dictating who comes in and who goes out of our country in matters like this. And for some people, coming here and actually living here and in the asylum system are two different things. So they have dreams of starting a life when they come here. But when they come here, they're stuck in this system where they're not allowed to work. There was a story the other week where one migrant was actually found on the coast living under a boat, and he was waiting for the gangs to take him back, but every time he'd try and get back, the police would intercept him and stop him leaving. And it's absolutely
why
crazy.
The police would do that. Why are the police trying to stop people arriving, but the people who want to leave, they're not stopping them leaving? Why would the police waste time and effort and resources to try to bring back a migrant who doesn't want to be here? I don't get that at all.
Well, it's also, as it is illegal to enter this country without documents and a visa, it's also illegal to leave the country without a visa. And therefore, it's up to the police to make sure that these people are safe, they're not harmed, especially while they're in British waters and on British territory. They're not taken advantage of by gangs. It's almost akin to sort of drug dealing as to why the police would stop drug dealers the same way they have to stop people smugglers and the people who use them, especially if they're on our shores. So that's why the police have to get involved.
Explain, Harjap, from the people that you know, the people that you work with, the migrants that you have been dealing with all these years, explain, for example, what somebody might think they were going to find when they get to this country, and then what they might find instead, which might be so disappointing and bleak and take so long that they think, well, absolutely, forget this for a game of soldiers. I want to get out of here, and I'm going to stow away under a truck or lorry to get back to France. I'm not staying here. Explain the gulf between what they were expecting and hoping for and what they actually get.
So the expectancy here is, one, they'll be safe. They'll be in a proper justice system, away from injustice, where people are treated equally. That's the first expectation. I hear everyone pretty much saying that that's what Britain offers them. The second is that they'd be allowed to work and they'll be allowed to make a life for themselves economically and prosper and pay their way. Now, that currently isn't allowed under the system. So that is sort of a dream of theirs that's sort of broken. Thirdly, that their case gets dealt with swiftly and quickly. That is also proven not to be the case. As we know, there's backlogs of up to 150,000, at least 100,000 that are still waiting for a decision. And the queues get sort of labelled as queue and backlog separately with the language with the government. And this is another thing. The other thing is that when state help does come, they're put into accommodation. They can't choose the accommodation that they want to go in, and that people would say, well, that's right. And they only get £6 a day to spend. So £6 a day is not great for them when they have a earning capacity. They could earn and pay their way. Ultimately, they'd like to pay their way and earn. If we opened it up tomorrow to the system, said all the illegal migrants that are living in the UK, and there's an estimated 1.5 million of them, if we said, you know what, we'll bring you into the system as long as you pay tax and earn X amount of money, there'd be at least, I would say, more than half that would sign up voluntarily to that system and would get to know where they are. But the actual system that we have in place drives them underground and sort of drives them into this situation that they don't really want to stay here, some of them, but they're stuck here in this system. And I suppose the government will argue, well, this acts as a deterrent and stops people coming here. But if you look at the figures, it actually doesn't stop people coming here at all. And it's no deterrent. it's
But talk to me about what could or would
control.
happen if an announcement were to be made, maybe even once a week, once a month, once every 6 months. Anybody who wants to go back and is not happy in this system, please say so. We'll take you back safely on a boat or a ferry or whatever it is, or in a truck on the Eurostar. If that were to be announced, do you think there would be take up? People would say, "Yeah, I don't like it here. It's been a fiasco. I'm leaving." Because if they wouldn't people like to see that happen?
Well, actually, that currently does happen. The government does have a scheme called a voluntary return scheme, where you can go to the government home office and say, you know what, I want to go back, send me back. And the government says, okay, we'll pay for your flight. Off you go. In fact, a large number of the returns are voluntary returns. The biggest amount are people who give up and want to go back, up to even about 30,000 a year. So 35,000 people a year leave this country voluntarily. People that shouldn't have been here or didn't get their asylum or got refused, they leave this country voluntarily. So that actually does happen. If
that's the case, then, Harjap, why today's story about these people who are so desperate to get out, keep stowing away, keep being brought back? Why aren't they just directed to the voluntary leaving service and told, look, you can't stow away, but we can organise for you to leave this way or that way, goodbye?
A very good question, and here's the answer to it. It's because the process takes too long. I mean, I've seen people last year who applied to leave voluntarily the UK, and their applications still haven't been processed this year. I mean, you'd think if someone says, I want to go on a Friday, that by at least Sunday, they'd have them on a plane or a boat.
Absolutely, goodbye. You want to go, here's a ticket. Goodbye, thank you.
If only, Vanessa, if only. It takes 6 to 12 months to process these people.
That's ridiculous, isn't it?
And
that's ridiculous.
This is how broken the Home Office and the border system is. And in that time, the people then become victims to the gangs. Because if someone says, I want to leave on a Friday, he wants to be out of here by Monday. He doesn't say, I want to leave next year. So if people want to voluntarily leave the UK, the advice always is, well, apply a year in advance, because this government are going to take ages. And that's the reason why these gangs are operating. They can get you in quickly and they can get you out quickly.
Okay,
it's a great business model.
Final question, Harjap, because I have to wind this up. Final question. Would you say that this side of migration, in other words, the migrants who don't like it here, don't want to be here, probably came here illegally, but wish they could get out because they don't like it, it was a mistake. Do you think this is massively under-publicised? Because it's not a story you hear very often. It's far from a front-page story. I found it on page 8 this morning. I had to look for it. Is it the kind of story that we want people in France, people further afield, to hear and know? There are migrants here who don't like it. There's no streets paved with gold. They're not living happily ever after. They want to get out. That's how much they don't like it. Just so people know, and just so maybe the trickle subsides.
Well, there should be a balance. And of course, these stories should be publicised and they should be put out. It might act as a bit of a deterrent, but often they're not. In fact, the government don't even really publicise it as these people have returned voluntarily. You never hear the government say X amount of people went back voluntarily. They amalgamate it in their own figures and say, we sent them back. We sent back 60,000, even if 35,000 of them left on their own. So this is how the government massaged the figures, and we've seen not for the first time. But yeah, stories like this definitely need to be put out there, just like you've done today.
Harjap, thank you very much indeed. We won't let that story lie. We'll bring it back whenever we can.
Immigration lawyer Harjap Singh Bhangal. The debate of the two lawyers, fantastic stuff. David, let's start with you. I'm not sure actually what your view is on this, but we'll find out. Should asylum seekers be allowed to work in this country, or would that encourage more people to illegally come to this country?
Good afternoon to you both. I think the first thing to look at is that if we had a proper immigration system in the first place and we were processing asylum seekers in a couple of weeks, we wouldn't need to have this debate, because asylum seekers would come in, and if they were granted it, that would be done quickly, and if not, they would be sent away. That's the first thing that the government really should be focusing on, rather than whether people should work or shouldn't work. Now, the reality is, of course, we've got an awful lot of asylum seekers here on waiting lists for years. Now, at the moment, if there's a shortage occupation and they've been here 12 months through no fault of their own, there is a system whereby asylum seekers can work. That's what we have at the moment. Now, that was strengthened because I think it was about 20 or so years ago. It was a lot less in terms of time. So it's a very complex debate, I think, Emily, because I think we've got to look at what what we are trying to achieve as a country. Are we trying to offer a deterrent to people coming here and saying people cannot work? Is that going to be a deterrent? Is it already deterring people? Or when I think it was Scotland in about December did a study on whether or not they should change these laws. And they found that it would bring more money to the Scottish economy by allowing asylum seekers to work and integrate into the country quicker. So I think it's a really, I would say in yes, but with very strict systems around it.
Well, there we go. Let's throw that right over to Harjap Singh Bhangal. We're wasting money. People are just sitting there as unproductive people. It's costing us £8 million a day. Why shouldn't they work?
No, they should be allowed to work. I think they should be allowed to work from day one. Why should we as a taxpayer have to put them up in hotels when in fact they can work and they're willing to work and pay rent? And some of them, we're not saying all of them, some of them just might get into these shortage occupations and fulfill the skills gap that we have. The fact is, the government, like our guest said, the system is flawed. If you're going to make these asylum seekers wait 2 years for a decision, how you expect them to feed themselves, to house themselves? The burden falls upon us. Now,
yes, but where's the deterrent though, and where's the? So ideally, we want people to apply for a visa, apply through legal ways to become a citizen of this country, to be granted asylum or to be granted a work permit. Aren't we essentially encouraging illegal behaviour, and won't allowing more and more asylum seekers to work while their claims are being processed actually encourage more people to take that treacherous journey over here?
The deterrent is reintroducing a fast-track system like we used to have in 2002 and 2003. I used to be on the Harmondsworth fast-track scheme where cases would be decided in 15 days. And someone could potentially be sent back after being refused after 20 days. It didn't take a year.
But that wasn't what I was asking, Harjap. I was asking about...
That is a deterrent. If somebody knows their claim is going to be finished in 20 days and they won't be allowed to work, and they could be on a plane on the 25th day, that's a deterrent. The deterrent announced yesterday by the government that they're going to pay TikTokers to say, please don't come to the UK, please, because Priya in Delhi or Marco in Albania has told them to, is absolutely ludicrous. With that money, $500,000 potentially being spent, we could have opened a processing centre in France, which would discourage families from making a trip across the channel. There's no safe routes. There's no actually, sort of Rwanda isn't a deterrent. We know that because there's not enough spaces there. The gangs are laughing. And the gangs are operating here and there. I mean, I remember last week, was it, you did a news item where someone was trying to get out of the UK. He's living under a boat and he's trying to get out. And the gangs wanted £1,800 off him to smuggle him out. So the gangs are operating both ways. Until you catch the gangs, there will never be a deterrent.
OK, Harjap, let's throw this back to David now. David, presumably you'd think that there should be more qualifications than just day one, arrive here, illegally start working.
Yeah, I would fundamentally disagree. I don't think that we should allow someone coming across the channel on day one to walk straight into a job. I think that is something that shouldn't be permitted. And I think perhaps, when the whole area needs to be reviewed. And one of the things that we could look at is people that are claiming asylum and are here lawfully, and they do exist, and people that are coming illegally across the channel. And whether we want to try and draw a distinction between the people that are here lawfully, claim asylum, and then the people that come unlawfully and illegally and claim asylum. But something, I think if we allow the system where if you come across on a boat and you can work, I think that is a big problem. I also think it's a problem from human rights as well, because what you will then get, you will get people smugglers and forced labour gangs bringing people in, knowing that the minute that they land on these shores, they can work. And that's a problem. But I think it's a very complex area because, of course, from a tax, when we're looking at how much it's costing us to house people and paying them and paying for the housing, if we could be actually having those people generate tax and income and not having the burden on the state. So I think we could all sit here for hours and have this debate and look at studies and whether it's effective or it's not. I think
most people would prefer that the government managed to control our borders first and foremost. But Harjap, just lastly, Robert Jenrick, he said the global asylum system has become a backdoor to the labour market for economic migrants who are in search of better prospects but not in fear of their life. He's right, isn't he?
Well, the fact is, do we need unskilled labour in this country? If you ask businesses, they will say yes. So is there a way for them to have unskilled labour after the end of free movement of workers? Possibly not. All the visa schemes that are geared up towards highly skilled people, to investors, people with money, or where we've got specific shortages such as care workers. Even they can't bring their family over now from March the 11th. And the wages have gone up to about 40,000, the requirements to come over on a work permit. So the fact is, are we going to listen to businesses and their needs, or are we going to say, actually, no, we're going to train the British people up to do these unskilled jobs? Because we've had 7 or 8 years to do that post-Brexit, and it doesn't seem to be working. These vacancies still exist. The British people aren't going out and filling them. We can't train our own for some reason. And, it does seem that many British people do not want to do these jobs that migrants do. And take, for example, when we walk into any building in London, the security guards will be migrants. The cleaners will be migrants. Even the makeup people who do my makeup at news channels are migrants.
Yeah.
Now, why can't British people do these jobs?
And we've got a huge amount of people who are on long-term sickness, long-term benefits, who are out of work entirely, aren't seeking work and so on. Thank you very much. That was a great debate. Harjap Singh Bhangal, immigration lawyer, and David Hay, who is an international human rights lawyer.
Lawyers and lawyers and lawyers.
Lawyer v. lawyer.
Sentiment. Well, to go through those figures, I'm now joined by immigration lawyer and friend of the show, Harjap Singh Bhangal. Harjap, welcome to the show. We voted to take back control time and time again, yet these figures feel like we've totally lost control. In fact, it almost feels like we've surrendered our borders.
Well, compared to the targets set by Cameron's government, Theresa May's government, the figures show that targets are not being met. And in fact, the biggest startling surprise is in the care and health sector industry, where applications are, including dependents, are actually up about 349%. So that's an astonishing increase. However, these people are filling the jobs in the health and care sector, which are needed, but it's the dependents, which it's actually more than the actual main applicants coming in. That's being changed on March the 11th. So under the care sector visa, you will not be able to bring your dependent over. And other stuff we've seen is that towards the end of the year, the actual asylum refusal or the grant rate went down from 80% to about 60%. So, and a lot of that was due to Albanians being discouraged to come here and Albanians being removed. However, there does seem to be a little bit of massaging of the figures, where they're claiming that the backlog has gone down by 25,000. And in fact, these claims are withdrawn. Now, you might remember that there was a weird quote by James Cleverly by saying, well, hold on, this is a part of a backlog and these applications are part of a queue. And everyone was going, well, isn't that the same thing? A backlog is a queue. Now, what's happened is these applications have been withdrawn due to maybe perhaps the Home Office not being in contact or people not being able to be found. And a lot of them, the figures show, have re-entered the system. And so they've joined this new queue, as it was, instead of the backlog. And now the Conservative government will claim victory as in, well, we've got the backlog down. Well, that's no good if the queue is getting bigger. So these figures are sort of astonishing. They don't really meet the targets that the Conservatives have set. And they don't really meet targets that previous Prime Ministers and the Home Secretaries have set.
Yeah, and then, Harjap, there's the notion of these visas being abused anyway. We've seen this week David Neil, who was sacked as the Chief Inspector of Borders and Immigration. He said sacked simply for doing his job. He blew the whistle on what was happening in the care sector. He reckons 25% of all visas were being abused by workers either coming for a very short period of time into the care sector or not at all. There was an incident of thousands of visas being issued for non-existent healthcare, homes and jobs. And as a consequence, they're also bringing dependents in. And so can we even trust the numbers themselves? Can we even trust where people are going? It just seems like the entire system has been taken over by lunatics.
So ਇਹ ਤਾਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਹੁਣ ਦੇਖ ਚੁੱਕੇ ਆ ਬਾਤ ਬਤਨ ਡਿਬੇਟਾਂ ਹੋਰ ਵੀ ਹੋਣੀਆਂ ਹਲੇ ਮੈਂ ਸਾਹ ਲੈ ਲਵਾਂ ਮੈਂ ਹੀ ਬੋਲੀ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਤਾਂ ਘਰ ਬਹਿ ਕੇ ਇੰਜੋਏ ਕਰਦੇ ਆ ਪਰ ਆਪਾਂ ਮਿਲਦੇ ਆ ਬ੍ਰੇਕ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ
GLS Solicitors is led by award-winning solicitor Harjap Singh Bhangal. GLS Solicitors, when the experts need an expert.
हाँ जी, मैं साल ले लिया थोड़ा जिहा हुण स्वागत है ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਬ੍ਰੇਕ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਤੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਬਾਕੀ ਦੀ ਜੋ ਮੈਂ ਗੱਲਾਂ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਸਟਾਰਟਰ ਦੇ ਸ਼ੋਅ ਤੇ ਕੀਆਂ ਸੀ ਉਹ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਦੇਖੋ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਇਹ ਸਾਰੀਆਂ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਬਾਰੇ ਦੱਸਦੇ ਆ ਤੇ ਸੁਣੋ ਧਿਆਨ ਨਾਲ ਕਿ ਉਹਦੇ ਚੋਂ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਕਾਫੀ ਨੌਲੇਜ ਮਿਲੂਗੀ.
Yeah, there is abuse of the health and care sector visa. We've seen that ourselves as well, where people have set up care agencies and the workers have come over and found out that the care agencies are non-existent. Or the care homes have just told them, go away, we've done our job, we've brought you over. And huge extortionate fees have been charged from these people to come over, from upwards of £20,000 to bring their families here. And after paying £20,000, these families don't want to go back. So they're going to be assimilated into the system, or they're going to go underground or off the radar. So there is big abuse in that. And the Home Office have been criticised rightly, and the whistle's been blown. Now, the Home Office's, James Cleverly's way to deal with it was to sack the whistleblower. It wasn't like, okay, we're going to take control, we're going to take on board what this person said, and, we need to clamp down. If that's your approach as a Home Secretary, you're not going to grab a hold of this situation. You do not sack the people that are looking out for you and are telling you, look, there's flaws and holes in the system. You actually listen to them. You need more of them people around you, not less. So what's happened is, he sacked that. The abuse is still there. It's still being done. There were more sponsor licenses issued last year than the previous year, which might be a warning sign if they were issued in the health and care sector. And these visas, which people have come over with families, hopefully the government think that they might decline due to the families not being allowed to come over now. And
this apple. Excuse me, sorry, just going to spit that out. Now, I'm joined by the New Culture Forum's Amy Gallagher's immigration lawyer Harjap Singh Bhangal and former UKIP leader Henry Bolton. Sorry about histrionics at the start, guys, but, this is getting to the point where you have to do something clownish now to try and get the attention of this government, who don't seem to know their arse from their elbow, if you'll pardon the expression.
No, they don't. They really don't. I
It's getting worse.
No. For the last couple of years, all we've heard about is Rwanda. Yeah. That's the thing that's going to solve this problem.
Which we know it isn't.
That's the deterrent. We've been told it's a deterrent. How can we ever have any serious deterrent when we are allowing in more claims than any other place in Europe? Yeah. And asylum seekers will know this. We live in a digital age. Information travels quickly. They will know that you're actually 3 times more likely to have your claim accepted here than in France. Yeah. That's why everyone's coming here. So there is no use this government talking about deterrence until they actually stop these asylum claims and stop our soft-touch approach to processing asylum seekers.
I mean, there is no deterrent. Harjap, you and I have spoken about this many times. It now seems to me that there's a very tiny number of people who are not being granted asylum. It looks like, minuscule numbers in the thousands. What happens to them? Because presumably they don't get deported. We can't deport them.
Well, this is a problem. Removals have been going down steadily since 2010. To be fair, last year they've gone up, but they're so minuscule in the numbers that it's not really in the numbers of the 30,000s that they were in 2010 and 11, 12. They've, 6,000 enforced removals, and most of them were Albanians.
Yes.
So it doesn't really...
Almost like another gimmick, you might think.
Yeah, it doesn't really deter anyone. And the fact is, we're not catching the gangs. We're not stopping the people traffickers. We've seen them advertise on social media.
Yeah, TikTok.
Yeah, you can pick them up on radars.
Yeah.
And the routes are the same, from the French coast to the Kent coast.
Yeah.
For the past 20 years.
Yeah, it's not like secret where they're coming from.
Yeah, everyone seems to know, and until we don't have any processing centre. Italy have been very smart recently. They've opened a processing centre in Albania.
Yeah.
So the nearest country to them.
Right.
Whereas our one is going to be thousands of miles away in Rwanda, to which we haven't sent a single person. In fact, last year we granted asylum to 21 Rwandan people.
Yeah. So
one side we're saying it's safe, and then we're saying, no, but 21 people can't be sent back because it's not safe.
Right.
So it's a total shambles.
It really is.
And this government really hasn't got a grip or a clue, despite what it said. And they're good at massaging the figures.
It's incredible. And also, Henry, what kind of business do you go from 7 million a day to house people in hotels to 15 million? Nobody saw that one coming. I mean, that's maybe the most surprising figure of all.
You say nobody saw that coming, but I think some of us did. The reality is that the pressure last year was building on Europe's southern borders, coming across the Mediterranean. Italy had twice the number of people coming across into Italy than it had the previous year. So we were inevitable, that has historically always had a sort of 12 months thereabouts, 9 to 12 months lag. We were inevitably going to see that in the North French coast and coming across the Channel. So the increase in cost, the increase in everything was inevitably going to go up. You know, and £5.4 billion. Yeah. I mean, you know, that. I think the aircraft carriers that we got, the Queen Elizabeth aircraft carrier, was 4.3. Right. You know, these are horrendously huge numbers we're talking about, as you said at the beginning of the programme. There is no deterrent, as you rightly said, but the government is focused on providing a deterrent to the people who want to come here. That's part of the story. They need to be deterring the people smugglers, and that means going after them. It means hunting them down ruthlessly. I've dealt with these people, albeit some years ago in the southern Balkans, and they are, I mean, Rishi Sunak, I think it was Rishi Sunak or James Cleverly, said just a couple of days ago that these people are numb to the deaths and the misery they're causing. That's nothing new. They've been numb to this
they're
for
criminal
decades.
human traffickers.
They don't care. Right. They care about one thing, and that's the money they make from this, exploiting the immigrants and so on, and actually marketing that movement. So the only way to deter them is to go after them, as we did until 2006 when Tony Blair pulled the funding on.
Yeah, it seems to be out of control. And are we the mugs here, Harjap? Because we do sit here quite a lot and talk about this, and we say the same things. You know, there are those who say, well, you need care workers, you need people to work in the NHS, we need to import workers because that's what the businesses of this country tell us. But there's something going very wrong between those conversations and government policy.
Well, the government promised us that they'd train British people up to do the British jobs. Yeah. They failed to do that. It's been 7 years.
They haven't trained anybody even up to be government ministers. I mean, they're useless.
They do, but they failed. So it's absolutely a shambles. I mean, there's no point stopping immigration on one hand from the EU and then saying we're going to let a lot of Indians and Zimbabweans and Nigerians in. Because then what was the point? Yeah. We might as well get our workforce from our neighbours. Yeah. And if we've upset our neighbours, stop the freedom of movement for our own British people to go abroad.
Although a lot of them did stay here, though, didn't they? I mean, the 5 million people from the EU did decide to stay in the UK.
Yeah, but you'll be surprised to know that the biggest number of people sent back from the port were actually Romanians. 48% of people from port removals were actually Romanians. And because under the Brexit laws, they're not qualified to work here anymore. Yeah. So what's happening here? I mean, housing, education, that is just government policy, you know, totally the government to blame. Yeah. Migrants, to be fair, they come on work visas, they pay tax, they have to pay an extra NHS charge.
But hang on, if they bring dependents with them, they're not a net benefit. They're a net drain, aren't they?
Well, the dependent can work. They can't claim public funds. So on their visa, it actually says no recourse to public funds.
Yeah, but the statistics are showing us that the dependents are not working. Pretty much.
Yeah, but they have the right to work. Now, asylum seekers don't have the right to work for a year. That's why we have to house them in hotels. So if they had permission to work, and then
you don't have to house them in hotels. Yeah, we could house them in a detention camp.
We haven't got the detention
facilities. Yeah, but they could do that, though.
We just haven't got... We haven't
They could do that. Henry, let me bring you in, because, you know, they don't have to be housed in hotels.
They don't.
There's no human right that says you must have at least a minimum of 3 or 4 stars and stay in a hotel with a cleaner and with food and with a bit of money in case you fancy a wander into the town.
All the way through this, from the beginning, from the moment a migrant makes the decision to move here, the whole process of that movement until they get here, what happens to them when they get here, all of that and how we manage that is a matter of decision.
That's the trouble, Harjap, isn't it? Finally, come to you, because once you set foot on you know, boots on the ground, as it were, on the beach at Dover, you're in, and you're not going anywhere.
The fact is that, once again, removals. So 50,000 people coming in is not a problem if you're sending 60,000 back. Right. The problem comes when 50,000 come in and you're only sending 6,000 back or 3,000 back. Now, that slope has been like that. And only recently, coincidentally before an election year where this government sees it's going to get battered, that they've decided, oh, do you know what? We might start sending a few people back.
I don't think you've got a hope in hell of that.
I don't think there's this strategy is going to work. It's too little, too late.
And they're not putting the resources into it.
And it should have been managed a lot better. Yeah. And this doesn't matter whoever the Home Secretary is.
Can you not set up a law firm that specifically deals with deporting people?
Well, there's got
to be some money in that.
It's called Her Majesty's government.
Yeah, but they can't do it, though. They need some proper people.
They're going to leave us all bankrupt.
You know, they need proper people like Henry to stop people coming in, and proper lawyers like you to help them get out.
Ironically, the government are very loath to take advice of people who are actually involved on the street level in the ground.
Absolutely.
They don't want to listen to us.
I've worked with 57 different countries on borders, and this country is the worst. I can say that as a categorical statement.
Yeah.
This country is the worst in terms of its government taking advice from other people in the security sector.
Yeah.
ਅੱਜ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਜੁੜ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ ਹਰਜਾਪ ਪੰਗਲ ਇਮੀਗ੍ਰੇਸ਼ਨ ਸੋਲਿਸਿਟਰ ਜਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ 3000 ਵੀਜ਼ਾ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਉਹ ਲਾਂਚ ਕੀਤੇ ਗਏ ਹੈ ਬੈਲਟ ਸਕੀਮ ਦੇ ਤਹਿਤ ਅਤੇ ਇਸ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਹੀ ਇੰਡੀਅਨ ਯੰਗ ਪ੍ਰੋਫੈਸ਼ਨਲ ਸਕੀਮ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਲਾਂਚ ਕੀਤੀ ਗਈ ਹੈ ਤਾਂ ਆਓ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕਰਦੇ ਇਸ ਬਾਰੇ ਕਿ ਇੰਡੀਅਨ ਯੰਗ ਪ੍ਰੋਫੈਸ਼ਨਲ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਸਕੀਮ ਹੈਗੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਵੀਜ਼ਾ ਸਕੀਮ ਹੈਗੀ ਉਹ ਕੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਹੈ ਹਰਜਾਪ ਜੀ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਪੀਟੀਸੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਬਹੁਤ-ਬਹੁਤ ਸਵਾਗਤ ਹੈ
ਸਤਿ ਸ਼੍ਰੀ ਅਕਾਲ ਜੀ ਧੰਨਵਾਦ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ
ਹਰਜਾਪ ਜੀ ਸਭ ਤੋਂ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਮੇਰਾ ਕੁਐਸਚਨ ਹੈਗਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਜਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਯੂਕੇ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਯੂਕੇ ਗਵਰਨਮੈਂਟ ਵੱਲੋਂ 3000 ਯੂਕੇ ਵੀਜ਼ਾ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਸਕੀਮ ਹੈ ਬੈਲਟ ਦੇ ਤਹਿਤ ਕੱਢੀ ਗਈ ਹੈ ਜਿਹਨੂੰ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਇੰਡੀਅਨ ਯੰਗ ਪ੍ਰੋਫੈਸ਼ਨਲ ਵੀਜ਼ਾਸ ਸੋ ਬੇਸਿਕਲੀ ਸਭ ਤੋਂ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਇਹ ਦੱਸੋ ਸਾਡੇ ਦਰਸ਼ਕਾਂ ਇਹ ਕੀ ਹੈਗਾ ਹੈ
ਇੰਡੀਅਨ ਯੰਗ ਪ੍ਰੋਫੈਸ਼ਨਲ ਸਕੀਮ ਅਨਾਉਂਸ ਕੀਤੀ ਗਈ ਸੀ ਕੁਝ ਸਾਲ ਪਹਿਲੇ ਕਿ ਜੀ ਜੋ ਇੰਡੀਆ ਦੇ ਗ੍ਰੈਜੂਏਟ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ 3000 ਜਗ੍ਹਾ ਦਿੱਤੀ ਜਾਊਗੀ ਕਿ ਇੱਥੇ ਆ ਕੇ 2 ਸਾਲ ਲਈ ਕੰਮ ਕਰਨ ਨਾਲੇ ਐਕਸਪੀਰੀਅੰਸ ਕਰਨ ਤੇ ਫਿਰ ਉਸ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਵਾਪਸ ਜਾਣ ਸੋ ਇੱਕ ਫੈਸਿਲਿਟੀ ਸੀਗੀ ਪ੍ਰੀਵੀਅਸਲੀ ਇੱਕ ਸਕੀਮ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਸੀ ਵਰਕਿੰਗ ਹੌਲੀਡੇ ਮੇਕਰ ਸਕੀਮ ਸੋ ਉਹਦੇ ਵਾਂਗਰ ਹੀ ਆ ਕਿ ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਰਿਪਲੇਸਮੈਂਟ ਆਈ ਸੀ ਯੂਥ ਮੋਬਿਲਿਟੀ ਸਕੀਮ ਪਰ ਯੂਥ ਮੋਬਿਲਿਟੀ ਸਕੀਮ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਆ ਉਹ ਇੰਡੀਆ ਲਈ ਹੈ ਨਹੀਂ ਸੋ ਉਹ ਆਸਟ੍ਰੇਲੀਆ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਨਿਊਜ਼ੀਲੈਂਡ ਜਾਪਾਨ ਇਹ ਮੁਲਕਾਂ ਲਈ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ ਸੋ ਇੰਡੀਆ ਲਈ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਅਲੱਗ ਸਕੀਮ ਬਣਾਈ ਆ ਜਿਹਨੂੰ ਸੱਦੇ ਇੰਡੀਅਨ ਯੰਗ ਪ੍ਰੋਫੈਸ਼ਨਲ ਸਕੀਮ ਜੋ ਹੈਗੀ
ਵਾਟ ਇਜ਼ ਅ ਬੈਲਟ ਸਿਸਟਮ ਬੇਸਿਕਲੀ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਇਸ ਸਕੀਮ ਦੇ ਅੰਡਰ ਕੱਢਿਆ ਗਿਆ
ਬੈਲਟ ਸਕੀਮ ਇਹ ਹੈਗੀ ਕਿ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਆਪਣਾ ਨਾਂ ਈਮੇਲ ਐਡਰੈਸ ਫੋਨ ਨੰਬਰ ਪਾਸਪੋਰਟ ਦਾ ਸਕੈਨ ਐਡਰੈਸ ਭੇਜਣਾ ਪੈਂਦਾ UKVI ਨੂੰ ਤੇ UKVI ਵਾਲੇ ਕੁਝ ਡੇਟਾ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸਕੀਮ ਬੰਦ ਹੋਣ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਬੈਲਟ ਬੰਦ ਹੋਣ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜੋ ਕਿ ਸਾਲ 'ਚ 2 ਵਾਰੀ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਹੈ ਫਰਵਰੀ ਤੇ ਜੁਲਾਈ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਤਾਂ ਉਹ ਫਿਰ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ 2 ਹਫ਼ਤਿਆਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇੱਦਾਂ ਲੋਟਰੀ ਸਟਾਈਲ ਚੁਣਦੀ ਹੈ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਨਾਂ ਸੋ ਜੇ 3 ਲੱਖ ਵੀ ਨਾ ਆਇਆ ਉਹਦੇ 'ਚ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਤਕਰੀਬਨ ਪਹਿਲੇ ਬੈਲਟ ਵਿੱਚ ਲਗਭਗ 1,500-2,000 ਚੁਣਨੇ ਆ ਤੇ ਬਾਕੀ ਦੇ 1000 ਜੁਲਾਈ 'ਚ ਚੁਣਨੇ ਜੇ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਨੰਬਰ ਆ ਗਿਆ ਤਾਂ 2 ਹਫ਼ਤਿਆਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਈਮੇਲ ਆਏਗੀ ਕਿ ਜੀ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਸਿਲੈਕਸ਼ਨ ਹੋ ਗਈ ਤਾਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ 90 ਦਿਨਾਂ ਵਿੱਚ ਲਈ ਹੁਣ ਵੀਜ਼ੇ ਲਈ ਅਪਲਾਈ ਕਰੋ
ਇਹਦਾ ਐਲੀਜੀਬਿਲਿਟੀ ਕ੍ਰਾਈਟੇਰੀਆ ਕਿਹੜਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਹੈ ਔਰ ਫਿਊਚਰ ਕੀ ਹੈਗਾ ਬਿਕਾਜ਼ ਯੂਕੇ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸਟੂਡੈਂਟਸ ਆਂਦੇ ਤਾਂ ਹੈਗੇ ਹੈ ਲੇਕਿਨ 2 ਸਾਲ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਜਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਯੂਕੇ ਗਵਰਨਮੈਂਟ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਕਿਹਾ ਕਿ ਤੁਸੀਂ 2 ਸਾਲ ਇੱਥੇ ਰਹਿ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ ਕੰਮ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ ਬਟ ਵਾਟ ਨੈਕਸਟ
ਓਕੇ ਸੋ ਇਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਬਾਹਲਾ ਕੋਈ ਫਿਊਚਰ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗਾ ਕਿ ਉਹ ਐਕਸਟੈਂਡੇਬਲ ਨਹੀਂ ਇੱਕੋ ਵਾਰੀ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਇਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਉਮਰ 18 ਤੋਂ 30 ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੋਣੇ ਚਾਹੀਦੇ ਆ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕੁਆਰੇ ਹੋਣੇ ਚਾਹੀਦੇ ਪ੍ਰੈਫਰਲੀ ਬੱਚੇ ਨਾ ਹੋਣ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਹਾਂਜੀ ਸੋ ਇਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਕਿਹਾ ਆਲਸੋ ਗ੍ਰੈਜੂਏਸ਼ਨ ਜ਼ਰੂਰੀ ਆ ਸੋ ਯੂ ਮਸਟ ਹੈਵ ਗ੍ਰੈਜੂਏਸ਼ਨ TB ਟੈਸਟ ਜ਼ਰੂਰੀ ਆ ਪੁਲਿਸ ਕਲੀਅਰੈਂਸ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਜ਼ਰੂਰੀ ਆ ਇਹ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਕੋਲ ਲਾਜ਼ਮੀ ਹੋਣੀਆਂ ਚਾਹੀਦੀਆਂ
ਕਿਹੜੇ ਪ੍ਰੋਫੈਸ਼ਨਲਸ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਇਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਅਪਲਾਈ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਨੇ ਸਪੈਸੀਫਿਕ ਕੋਈ ਕੋਰਸ ਵਗੈਰਾ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਗਿਆ ਹੈ ਜਾਂ ਜਸਟ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕੋਈ ਵੀ ਅਪਲਾਈ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਕੋਈ ਵੀ ਡਿਗਰੀ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਅਪਲਾਈ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ
ਕੋਈ ਵੀ ਜੀ ਆਰਟਸ ਤੋਂ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਸਾਇੰਸ ਤੱਕ ਸਪੋਰਟਸ ਤੱਕ ਕੁਝ ਵੀ ਕੋਈ ਵੀ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਗ੍ਰੈਜੂਏਸ਼ਨ ਹੋਈ ਹੋਵੇ ਸੋ ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਅਪਲਾਈ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਆ ਐਸ ਲੌਂਗ ਐਸ ਯੂ ਹੈਵ ਗੋਟ ਅ ਡਿਗਰੀ
ਸੋ ਇੰਡੀਆ ਇਨਕਲੂਡਡ ਯੂਥ ਮੋਬਿਲਿਟੀ ਵੀਜ਼ਾ ਸੋ ਔਰ ਇੰਡੀਅਨ ਯੰਗ ਪ੍ਰੋਫੈਸ਼ਨਲ ਸਕੀਮ ਇਹਦੇ ਦੋਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕੀ ਡਿਫਰੈਂਸ ਹੈਗਾ ਹੈ ਬਿਕਾਜ਼ ਸਟੂਡੈਂਟਸ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਉਹ ਬਹੁਤ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਕਨਫਿਊਜ਼ ਹੈਗੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਹੁਣੇ ਦੱਸਿਆ ਕਿ ਇਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸਿਰਫ ਇਹੀ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਇੰਡੀਅਨ ਯੰਗ ਪ੍ਰੋਫੈਸ਼ਨਲ ਸਕੀਮ ਉਹ ਇੰਡੀਆ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਹੈਗੀ ਲੇਕਿਨ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਇੰਡੀਅਨ ਯੂਥ ਮੋਬਿਲਿਟੀ ਵੀਜ਼ਾ ਸਕੀਮ ਹੈਗੀ ਉਹ ਇੰਡੀਆ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗੀ ਲੇਕਿਨ ਪਿਛਲੇ ਸਾਲ ਹੀ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਗੱਲ ਕੀਤੀ ਜਾਈ ਕਿ ਪਿਛਲੇ ਸਾਲ ਕਾਫੀ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਸ਼ੋਰ ਹੋਇਆ ਸੀਗਾ ਇਸ ਚੀਜ਼ ਨੂੰ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਕਿ ਇੰਡੀਆ ਮੋਬਿਲਿਟੀ ਸਕੀਮ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਉਹ ਵੀ ਇੰਡੀਆ ਦੇ ਸਟੂਡੈਂਟਸ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਅਪਲਾਈ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਨੇ
ਨਹੀਂ ਉਹ ਫਿਲਹਾਲ ਹੈ ਨਹੀਂ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਵੈਬਸਾਈਟ ਤੇ ਜਾਓ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਕੁਝ ਦੇਸ਼ ਲਿਖੇ ਹੋ ਰਫਲੀ 10-12 ਦੇਸ਼ ਹੈਗੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ 'ਚ ਇੰਡੀਆ ਹੈ ਨਹੀਂ ਇੰਡੀਆ ਲਈ ਸਪੈਸੀਫਿਕਲੀ ਯੰਗ ਪ੍ਰੋਫੈਸ਼ਨਲ ਸਕੀਮ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ ਸੋ ਇੰਡੀਆ ਲਈ ਉਹ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਆ ਕਿ ਯੰਗ ਪ੍ਰੋਫੈਸ਼ਨਲ 'ਚ ਅਪਲਾਈ ਕਰੋ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਤੇ ਯੂਥ ਮੋਬਿਲਿਟੀ ਵਿੱਚ ਤੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਉਹ ਡਿਫਰੈਂਟ ਕ੍ਰਾਈਟੇਰੀਆ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਗ੍ਰੈਜੂਏਟ ਦੀ ਜ਼ਰੂਰਤ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਸੋ ਬੇਸਿਕਲੀ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਇੰਡੀਆ ਤੋਂ +2 ਵਾਲੇ ਚਾਹੀਦੇ ਨਹੀਂ ਮੈਂ ਇਹ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਪਿਆਰ ਨਾਲ ਹੀ ਸਮਝਾ ਰਿਹਾ ਹਾਂ ਇਹ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ +2 ਵਾਲੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਰੱਖੋ ਜੇ ਕੋਈ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਕੋਲ ਚੱਜ ਦਾ ਗ੍ਰੈਜੂਏਟ ਆ ਆਪਾਂ ਚੁਣਾਂਗੇ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਤਾਂ ਫਿਰ ਉਹ 2 ਸਾਲ ਇੱਥੇ ਆ ਕੇ ਦੇਖੇ ਜੇ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਕੋਈ ਇੱਥੇ ਵਰਕ ਪਰਮਿਟ ਵਗੈਰਾ ਕੁਝ ਮਿਲਦਾ ਆ ਉਹ ਫਿਰ ਵਾਪਸ ਜਾ ਕੇ ਫਿਰ ਆਪਣਾ ਵੀਜ਼ਾ ਲਵਾ ਸਕਦਾ ਜਾਂ ਫਿਰ ਵਾਪਸ ਜਾ ਕੇ ਐਜ਼ ਅ ਸਟੂਡੈਂਟ ਆ ਸਕਦਾ ਪਰ ਇੱਥੋਂ ਸਵਿਚਿੰਗ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੋ ਸਕਦੀ ਯੂਕੇ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚੋਂ ਸੋ ਯੂ ਓਨਲੀ ਗੈਟ ਦਿਸ ਵਨ ਓਪਰਚੁਨਿਟੀ ਟੂ ਕਮ ਹੇਅਰ ਐਂਡ ਵਰਕ ਫॉर 2 ਇਅਰਸ 2 ਸਾਲ
ਇੱਥੋਂ ਸਵਿਚਿੰਗ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੋ ਸਕਦੀ ਬਟ ਜੇ ਕੋਈ ਕੰਪਨੀ ਸਪਾਂਸਰ ਕਰਨਾ ਚਾਹੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਸਟੂਡੈਂਟਸ ਨੂੰ ਦੈਨ
ਫਿਰ ਵਾਪਸ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਕਾਜ਼ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਫਿਰ ਇੰਡੀਆ ਤੋਂ ਫਿਰ ਅਪਲਾਈ ਕਰਨਾ ਪੈਂਦਾ ਇੱਥੇ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੋਣਾ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਸਵਿਚ
ਓਕੇ ਤੋ ਆਈ ਮੀਨ ਇਹ ਸਕੀਮ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਇੰਨੀ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਯੂਜ਼ਫੁਲ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗੀ ਸਟੂਡੈਂਟ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਕਿਹਾ ਜਾ ਸਕਦਾ ਹੈ
ਜੇ ਡਿਪੈਂਡ ਕਰਦਾ ਜੇ ਤਾਂ ਆਪਾਂ ਕੰਮ ਕਰਨਾ 2 ਸਾਲ ਤੱਕ ਵਾਪਸ ਜਾਣਾ ਪਿੰਡਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਫਿਰ ਤਾਂ ਬਹੁਤ ਵਧੀਆ ਹੈ ਜੇ ਤਾਂ ਆਪਾਂ ਸੋਚਦੇ ਕਿ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੁਣ ਆਪਾਂ ਇੱਕ ਪੈਰ ਤਾਂ ਇੰਗਲੈਂਡ 'ਚ ਆ ਗਿਆ ਤਾਂ ਹੁਣ ਤਾਂ ਆਪਣਾ ਅੱਡਾ ਜਮਾਉਣਾ ਆਪਾਂ ਫਿਰ ਇਹ ਰਾਈਟ ਸਕੀਮ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗੀ ਫਿਰ ਤਾਂ ਬੈਸਟ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸਟੂਡੈਂਟ ਦੇਖੋ ਸਕੀਮ ਜਾਂ ਕੋਈ ਵਰਕ ਪਰਮਿਟ ਦੇਖੋ ਕਿ ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਫਿਊਚਰ ਤੇ ਸੈਟਲਮੈਂਟ ਸਕੀਮਸ ਹੈਗੀਆਂ
ਜੇ ਗੱਲ ਕੀਤੀ ਜਾਵੇ ਫੰਡਿੰਗ ਦੀ ਫੀਸ ਦੀ ਤਾਂ ਉਹਦਾ ਕੀ ਸਟਰਕਚਰ ਹੈਗਾ ਤੇ ਕਿਹੜੇ ਡਾਕੂਮੈਂਟਸ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਜੇ ਉਹ ਸਕਸੈਸ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਉਹ ਕਿਹੜੇ ਡਾਕੂਮੈਂਟਸ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਸਟੂਡੈਂਟਸ ਨੂੰ ਰੈਡੀ ਰੱਖਣੇ ਚਾਹੀਦੇ
ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਤਾਂ ਪਾਸਪੋਰਟ ਚਾਹੀਦਾ ਹੈ ਫੀਸ ਇਹਦੀ ਅਪਲਾਈ ਕਰਨ ਲਈ ਲਗਭਗ 300 ਪਾਉਂਡ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ ਇਹਦਾ NHS IHS ਚਾਰਜ ਉਹ ਵੀ ਭਰ ਹੁੰਦਾ 2 ਸਾਲਾਂ ਲਈ ਸੋ ਲਗਭਗ ਉਹ 2000 ਪਾਉਂਡ ਉਹ ਹੋਣਾ ਆ ਤੇ ਕਾਗਜ਼ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਚਾਹੀਦੇ ਆ TB ਟੈਸਟ ਪੁਲਿਸ ਕਲੀਅਰੈਂਸ ਸਰਟੀਫਿਕੇਟ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਪਾਸਪੋਰਟ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਡਿਗਰੀ ਦੀ ਕਾਪੀ ਇਹ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਚਾਹੀਦੀਆਂ ਬਾਕੀ ਬੈਂਕ ਸਟੇਟਮੈਂਟ ਟੂ ਸ਼ੋ ਕਿ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਕੋਲ ਲਗਭਗ 2,60,000 ਰੁਪਈਆ ਹੈਗਾ 2,530 ਪਾਉਂਡ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਚਾਹੀਦਾ ਹੈ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਬੈਂਕ 'ਚ ਕਿ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਮੇਨਟੇਨੈਂਸ ਆਪਣੀ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਆ ਇਨੀਸ਼ੀਅਲੀ ਜੋ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ
ਇਸ ਵੀਜ਼ਾ ਦੇ ਤਹਿਤ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਆਪਣੀ ਫੈਮਿਲੀ ਨੂੰ ਵੀ ਇੱਥੇ ਇਨਵਾਈਟ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਰਾਈਟ
ਨਹੀਂ ਜੀ ਇਹ ਤਕਰੀਬਨ ਛੜੇ ਮਹਿਕਮੇ ਲਈ ਆ
ਸੋ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਯੰਗਸਟਰ ਹੈਗੇ ਭੈਣ ਭਰਾ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਇਸ ਸਕੀਮ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਅਪਲਾਈ ਕਰਨਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਨੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕੀ ਮੈਸੇਜ ਦੇਣਾ ਚਾਹੋਗੇ
ਦੇਖੋ ਟਰਾਈ ਕਰ ਲਓ ਲੋਟਰੀ ਆ ਬਾਹਲਾ ਉਮੀਦ ਨਾ ਰੱਖੋ ਕਿ ਇਹਦੇ 'ਚ 3 ਲੱਖ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੇ ਵੀ ਅਪਲਾਈ ਕੀਤਾ ਆ ਤਾਂ 3,000 ਚੋਂ ਜਾਂ 2,000 ਤੁਸੀਂ ਆਪੇ ਹੀ ਆਊਟਸ ਦੇਖ ਲਓ ਅਪਲਾਈ ਤਾਂ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਨੇ ਕਰ ਹੀ ਲੈਣਾ ਆ ਦੇਖ ਲਓ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਦਾ ਹੀ ਦੇਖੋ ਮੇਰੇ ਖਿਆਲ ਲੱਖਾਂ ਤੋਂ ਉਹਦੇ 'ਚੋਂ ਅਪਲਾਈ ਕਰਨੇ ਹਾਲੇ ਗੁਜਰਾਤ ਵੱਲ ਵਗੈਰਾ ਤਾਂ ਗਏ ਹੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਆਪਾਂ ਤਾਂ ਦਿੱਲੀ ਵੱਲ ਸੋ ਇਹ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਅਪਲਾਈ ਕਰਕੇ ਦੇਖ ਲਓ ਘਾਟਾ ਤਾਂ ਕੋਈ ਨਹੀਂ ਜੇ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਲੱਗ ਗਿਆ ਜੇ ਨਹੀਂ ਸੀ ਫਿਰ ਹੋਰ ਸਕੀਮ ਦੇਖ ਲਓ
ਡਿਪੈਂਡ ਔਨ ਦਾ ਲੱਕ
ਟੋਟਲੀ ਲੱਕ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਆ ਬੈਲਟ ਸਕੀਮ ਦਾ ਮਤਲਬ ਹੀ ਇਹੀ ਆ ਕਿ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਅੱਖਾਂ ਮੀਚ ਕੇ ਚੁਣਨਾ ਆ ਲੋਟਰੀ ਸਿਸਟਮ ਜੇ ਨੰਬਰ ਆ ਗਿਆ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਨੰਬਰ ਆ ਗਿਆ ਸੋ ਰੱਬ ਨੂੰ ਤੇ ਆ ਕੇ ਕਰ ਦਿਓ ਅਪਲਾਈ ਜੇ ਨਹੀਂ ਕੋਈ ਗੱਲ ਨਹੀਂ ਤਾਂ ਫਿਰ ਰੱਬ ਨੂੰ ਕਹੋ ਕਿ ਹੋਰ ਰੂਟ ਭੇਜ ਦਿਓ
ਜੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਵੀ ਇਸ ਸਕੀਮ ਦੇ ਤਹਿਤ ਅਪਲਾਈ ਕਰਨਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਤਾਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਵੀ ਜੁਲਾਈ ਤੱਕ ਵੇਟ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ ਤੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਡਾਕੂਮੈਂਟਸ ਤਿਆਰ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ ਲੇਕਿਨ ਫਿੰਗਰ ਕ੍ਰਾਸ ਡਿਪੈਂਡ ਔਨ ਦਾ ਲੱਕ ਅਨਮੋਲ ਕੌਰ PTC ਨਿਊਜ਼ ਲੰਡਨ
I want to speak to a lawyer now, Harjap Bhangal, to get a perspective on what actually happened today. So Harjap specialises in immigration and national law. Harjap, please, could you break down what this ruling means and what happened today and what could happen next?
Well, this was a technical hearing to see whether the previous decision made by the SIAC was correct or not. And in fact, the Court of Appeal has ruled on that point that actually that decision was correct to deny Shamima essentially to come back to the UK and to rule as it did. It's not there to rule on points of morality or opinion. The Court of Appeal's job today was to see whether the previous decision was correct in law, and that's what it has decided, that there was no fault made. And as a result, Shamima remains excluded and her citizenship remains deprived.
But her lawyer says that this won't be the end of her fight. What would that mean in the future?
That means a potential appeal to the Supreme Court, which might take a year, and then the Supreme Court will hear this case again and decide whether this judgment is correct or not. But for that time, she would remain excluded from the UK and not allowed to come here. Essentially, it's another lengthy process. It's one thing to say we're not going to give up, but every case has to be decided when lawyers decide whether it's the chances of it succeeding or not on its merits. So, I mean, this is quite a landmark judgment and a big victory for the government today, because essentially what it's saying that the correct steps were taken by the Home Secretary at the time, Sajid Javid, in relation to deprive Shamima Begum. And the implications could be quite widespread for this.
And this is all to do with national security. Do you think she does pose a risk to national security?
I don't know whether now she's a risk to national security, but as one of your guests said earlier, she definitely will prove to be a massive distraction. And as your other guest said, she might just come here to spend a lifetime behind bars. So she probably might even be freer in a refugee camp than she would be here. She'd be more free there. So essentially, we're going to looking at what sort of life would she have. But I think that the key is, if we're looking at on a moral thing, on a moral compass, is she's born in the UK, she's bred in the UK. Is it the UK's responsibility to punish her and to deal with her case rather than just say, actually, she's not our responsibility. She can rot wherever she wants. She made her own bed and she can lie in it. And I think that's the sort of moral question which everyone is sort of arguing over at the moment.
I think there's another argument to say that this ruling may put off other ISIS runaways from trying to return to the UK. Do you think that that's true? And also, how many of them do you think that there would be?
We don't really know how many there are, but whether it acts as a deterrent, yeah, essentially. If someone's who's eligible for dual nationality is now thinking of going to go abroad and thinking they can come back here after joining terror groups, then they might think again if they're looking at her state that she's in. But equally, if someone's sole nationality is British and they're not eligible for anything else, then that won't put them off, because they'll always be a British citizen and Britain will always essentially have to accept them back. So it's almost creating a sort of two-tier system and two-tier sort of nationality in effect, that if you're eligible for another nationality, then Britain can take your nationality away if you're going to get involved in this. And some people will probably say, well, rightly so. I mean, you know, if you don't want to do the time, then don't do the crime.
ਹਾਂਜੀ ਮੈਂ ਤਾਂ ਗਿਆ ਜੀ, ਤੁਸੀਂ ਤਾਂ ਥੱਕ ਗਏ ਹੋਣੇ ਸੁਣ ਕੇ, ਜਿਹੜਾ ਬੋਲਦਾ ਇੰਨਾ ਉਹ ਨਹੀਂ ਥੱਕਦਾ, ਸੋ ਉਹ ਤਾਂ ਥੱਕ ਗਿਆ ਜੀ। ਹੁਣ ਮੇਰਾ ਹੋ ਗਿਆ ਟਾਈਮ ਘਰ ਜਾਣ ਦਾ, ਤੇ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਦਿਓ ਇਜਾਜ਼ਤ, ਮੈਂ ਜਾਵਾਂ ਘਰ, ਤੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕਰੋ ਬਾਕੀ ਦਾ ਆਪਣਾ ਵੀਕਐਂਡ ਇੰਜੋਏ। ਮੇਰਾ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਪਤਾ ਹੀ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਜੇ ਨਾ ਕੇ ਮਿਲਣਾ ਮੈਂ ਦਫ਼ਤਰ ਹੀ ਹੁੰਨਾ, ਮੰਡੇ ਟਿਊਜ਼ਡੇ ਥਰਸਡੇ ਫਰਾਈਡੇ ਮੈਂ ਹੁੰਨਾ ਬ੍ਰੈਂਟਫੋਰਡ ਦਫ਼ਤਰ, ਜੋ ਸਾਡਾ ਹੰਸਲੋ ਦੇ ਕੋਲ ਆ, ਜੋ GSK ਦੇ ਕੋਲ ਜਿਲੈਟ ਕਾਰਨਰ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਆ ਹੋਮ ਬੇਸ ਆ, ਉਹਦੇ ਬਿਲਕੁਲ ਨਾਲ ਸਾਇਨ ਕਲੀਨਿਕ BMW ਗੈਰੇਜ, ਸੋ ਉੱਥੇ ਆ ਸਾਡਾ ਦਫ਼ਤਰ ਗਰਾਊਂਡ ਫਲੋਰ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਵੈਸਟਲਿੰਕ ਹਾਊਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ। ਤੇ ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਨੇ ਬਰਮਿੰਘਮ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਮਿਲਣਾ, ਉਹ ਹਰ ਬੁੱਧਵਾਰ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਉੱਥੇ ਮੈਂ ਹਾਈ ਸਟਰੀਟ ਤੇ ਕੋਨੇ ਤੇ 45 ਤੇ 47 ਹਾਈ ਸਟਰੀਟ ਯੋਗੀ ਹੇਅਰ ਡਰੈਸਰ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਤੇ ਗ੍ਰੇਟ ਲਾਇਨ ਪਬ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਵੈਸਟ ਬ੍ਰਾਊਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਨੇ ਆ ਕੇ ਮਿਲਣਾ ਆ। ਐਕਚੁਅਲੀ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਵੈਸਟ ਬ੍ਰਾਊਨ ਜਾ ਕੇ ਕਿਸੇ ਨੂੰ ਪੁੱਛ ਲਓ ਹਰਜਾਪ ਦਾ ਦਫ਼ਤਰ ਕਿੱਥੇ ਆ, ਤਾਂ ਉਹ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਦੱਸ ਦੂਗੇ ਕਿ ਕਿੱਥੇ ਆ। ਤੇ ਮਿਲਾਂਗੇ ਜੀ ਜਿਹਨਾਂ ਆ ਕੇ ਪਰਸਨਲੀ ਮਿਲਣਾ, ਨਹੀਂ ਤਾਂ ਫਿਰ ਅਗਲੇ ਫਰਾਈਡੇ ਤਾਂ ਆਪਾਂ ਮਿਲਦੇ ਹੀ ਹਾਂ, ਤਾਂ ਆਪਾਂ ਬਹਿ ਕੇ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ, ਐਂਡ ਬਾਕੀ ਆਪਣੇ ਵਿਚਾਰ ਸਾਂਝੇ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ, ਤੁਹਾਡੀਆਂ ਕੋਲਾਂ ਵੀ ਲਵਾਂਗੇ। ਸੋ ਨੈਕਸਟ ਵੀਕ ਮੈਂ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਫੋਨ ਲਾਈਨਸ ਓਪਨ ਕਰਕੇ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਸਵਾਲ ਜਵਾਬ ਕੋਲਸ ਲਵਾਂਗੇ। ਬਾਕੀ ਇੰਨਾ ਹੀ ਹੈ ਜੀ, ਪਿਆਰ ਨਾਲ ਰਹੋ, ਪ੍ਰੇਮ ਨਾਲ ਰਹੋ, ਇੰਜੋਏ ਦ ਵੀਕਐਂਡ। ਇਹ ਸੰਡੇ ਜੋ ਹੈਗਾ ਆ ਜੀ ਮਦਰਸ ਡੇ ਹੈਗਾ ਆ, ਅਤੇ ਮਦਰਸ ਡੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਆਪਣਾ ਇੰਜੋਏ ਕਰੋ। ਜਿਹਨੇ ਘਰਾਂ 'ਚ ਮਾਵਾਂ ਹੈ ਨਹੀਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਪੁੱਛੋ ਕਿ ਜੀ ਮਾਂ ਦਾ ਕੀ ਮੁੱਲ ਆ। ਇਸ ਵੇਲੇ ਐਕਚੁਅਲੀ ਸਾਡੇ ਲਈ ਵੀ ਅਨੋਖਾ ਹੀ ਆ ਮਦਰਸ ਡੇ ਆਇਆ, ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਮੇਰੀ ਮੰਮੀ ਵੀ ਹਸਪਤਾਲ 'ਚ ਹੀ ਆ, ਅਤੇ ਉਹ ਵੀ ਪਿੱਛੇ ਜੇ ਹਫ਼ਤਾ ਦੋ ਹਫ਼ਤੇ ਹੋਏ ਗਿਰ ਕੇ ਸੀਗੇ ਘਰੇ ਹੀ, ਅਤੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਲੱਤ ਜੋ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ ਉਹ ਟੁੱਟ ਗਈ ਸੀਗੀ, ਉਹਦਾ ਆਪਰੇਸ਼ਨ ਹੋਇਆ, ਫਿਰ ਰੋਡ ਪਿਆ, ਅਤੇ ਜਦ ਦੇ ਉਹ ਹਸਪਤਾਲ ਹੀ ਆ। ਸੋ ਸਾਡੇ ਘਰ ਵੀ ਇਸ ਵੇਲੇ ਮਾਂ ਹੈ ਨਹੀਂ, ਅਤੇ ਪਤਾ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਜੀ ਜਿਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਆਪਾਂ ਨੂੰ 2 ਹਫ਼ਤਿਆਂ 'ਚ ਔਖੇ ਹੋਏ ਆ, ਅਤੇ ਜਿਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਘਰ ਕਈ ਸਾਲਾਂ ਤੋਂ ਹੈ ਨਹੀਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਪੁੱਛੋ। ਸੋ ਆਪਣੀ ਮਾਂ ਦਾ ਜੀ ਕਦਰ ਪਾਓ। Kids out there, hug your mum. You only get one of them. So hug them, buy her something nice for Sunday and get her all the nice stuff and all good presents, and make sure she doesn't have to work. And mums, enjoy your Sunday, because Monday you have to do the same stuff that you've been doing for the past 20 odd years again. So yeah, no change there. But yes, and ਜੇ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਮਾਂ ਇਸ ਵੇਲੇ ਇਸ ਮੁਲਕ 'ਚ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਹੈ ਨਹੀਂ, ਕਈਆਂ ਦੀ ਮੰਮੀਆਂ ਇੰਡੀਆ ਆ, ਅਤੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਜ਼ਰੂਰ ਫੋਨ ਕਰਿਆ ਕਰੋ। ਇੱਕ ਵਾਰੀ ਦਿਹਾੜੀ ਦਾ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਜ਼ਰੂਰ ਫੋਨ ਕਰਿਆ ਕਰੋ, ਈਵਨ ਜਸਟ ਟੂ ਸੇ ਹੈਲੋ। ਹੁਣ ਤਾਂ ਇਸ ਟਾਈਮ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਬਹੁਤ ਲੱਕੀ ਆ, ਵਟਸਐਪ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸ਼ਕਲਾਂ ਦਿਖ ਰਹੀਆਂ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ, ਫੇਸ ਟਾਈਮ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਦੇ ਇੱਦਾਂ ਹੀ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਜਿੱਦਾਂ ਨਾਲ ਹੀ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਆ। ਤੁਸੀਂ ਉਹ ਦੇਖੋ ਜਿਹੜੇ 20-30 ਸਾਲ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਆਏ ਸੀਗੇ ਜੀ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਤਾਂ ਚਿੱਠੀਆਂ ਪਾਉਣੀਆਂ, ਸਿਰਫ ਫੋਨ 'ਤੇ ਆਵਾਜ਼ ਸੁਣਨੀ, ਫੋਟੋ ਭੇਜਣੀਆਂ ਜੀ ਪੋਸਟ ਰਾਹੀਂ ਇੱਕ ਦੂਜੇ ਨੂੰ। ਇਹ ਜੋ ਇੰਸਟੈਂਟਲੀ ਕੰਮ ਸੀ ਉਹ ਤਾਂ ਸੀਗਾ ਹੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਜੀ ਜੋ ਹੈਗਾ ਆ। ਸੋ ਹੁਣ ਟੈਕਨੋਲੋਜੀ ਦਾ ਫਾਇਦਾ ਉਠਾਓ, ਬਟ ਪਲੀਜ਼ ਆਪਣੇ ਇਸ ਸੰਡੇ ਮਦਰਸ ਡੇ ਨੂੰ ਤਾਂ ਫੋਨ ਕਰਨੇ ਆ, ਪਰ ਐਵਰੀ ਡੇ ਮਦਰ ਦਾ ਡੇ ਹੈਗਾ। ਆਪਣੀ ਮਦਰ ਨੂੰ ਜ਼ਰੂਰ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਫੋਨ ਕਰਿਆ ਕਰੋ, ਆਪਣੀ ਆਵਾਜ਼ ਦਿਖਾਉਣ ਨੂੰ ਤਾਂ ਆਪਣੀ ਸ਼ਕਲ ਦਿਖਾਉਣ ਨੂੰ, ਇਹੀ ਪੁੱਛਣ ਨੂੰ ਕਿ ਮਾਂ ਕਿੱਦਾਂ, ਅਤੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਦਿਨ ਬਾਰੇ ਦੱਸੋ ਕਿੱਦਾਂ ਨਿਕਲਿਆ ਇਹ ਨਹੀਂ। ਸੋ ਮੇਰੇ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਇੰਨਾ ਹੀ ਸੀ, ਮੈਂ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਮਿਲੂੰਗਾ ਅਗਲੇ ਫਰਾਈਡੇ, ਅਤੇ ਅੰਟਿਲ ਦੈਨ ਧਿਆਨ ਰੱਖੋ ਆਪਣਾ। ਸਤਿ ਸ਼੍ਰੀ ਅਕਾਲ।
GLS Solicitors is led by award-winning solicitor Harjap Singh Bhangal. GLS Solicitors, when the experts need an expert.